The judge had barely cleared his throat when laughter cut through the courtroom. Daniel leaned into Ethan, his smirk slicing like a knife. "Mom doesn't own a thing. This will be over in minutes." My knuckles whitened around the old land ledger, the only proof of my life's sacrifice. 2 men I once nursed and raised through storm now sat grinning like jackals. After all I gave. How did it come to this? Then the first cut came at Sunday dinner. Daniel swirled his wine and smirked. "When the estate is ours, I'll tear down that barn and build a pool." The word ours struck me like a blade. Ethan chuckled nervously, glancing at me but refusing to meet my eyes. This place needs to look modern anyway. I gripped the ladle so tight it rattled against the pot. "This house was built with your father's hands," I whispered. Daniel only shrugged. Memories don't pay. Weeks later, I stumbled upon papers in a drawer. Transfer documents drafted by Daniel's lawyer as if ownership was already theirs. My blood froze. When I confronted them, Daniel didn't flinch. "You've had your time, Mom. Step aside before you embarrass yourself." And Ethan, my gentle boy, looked away. That silence cut deeper than Daniel's cruelty. Soon after, the court summons came, my own children dragging me before a judge to erase everything Charles and I built. I opened the cedar chest, pulled out the worn leather ledger, each page a record of sacrifice. Not legal proof, but memory. And in those pages, I felt Charles whisper, "Don't let them erase you." Now, here I was in the courtroom, my sons grinning like strangers. The bailiff called, "All rise." As I stood, I told myself, this isn't just about land, this is about dignity. The gavel cracked like thunder. Daniel leaned into Ethan and hissed, "She's already lost." But they had forgotten one thing. I still carried the truth. If you were in my shoes, mocked by your own children, would you crumble or fight back? Before I take you deeper into the storm of betrayal and the shocking twists that followed, let me pause for a moment. Don't forget to subscribe to Twist Stories and ring the bell. Here you'll always find tales of sacrifice, betrayal, and the tables turning in ways no one saw coming. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below. Perhaps the next story will echo your very own experience, because the battle was just beginning. They laughed at me in court. That line still sits like a stone in my throat. But their laughter wasn't sudden. It was fed by months of small cruelties, each one sharper than the last. The morning after our first hearing, dawn broke cold over the fields. I made coffee in the dented percolator Charles and I bought decades ago. By habit, I set 2 mugs, then pushed one back. My phone buzzed. Daniel's name. "Utilities will be in our name starting next week. Please plan accordingly." No greeting, just a command. Our water, our lights. The silent pulse of my home, reassigned in one sentence. That afternoon, Ethan stood in the yard, hands in his jacket, shoulders tense. "You're shutting off the utilities?" I asked. He stared at the ground. "We're streamlining. The lawyer says it's cleaner." "Consolidated to whom?" His silence was answer enough. I laughed, brittle. "The estate your father and I built, or the one your brother wants to flip?" "You're making this hostile," he muttered. "Honesty isn't hostility," I told him. Then came the words that stung most. "Daniel says you're not thinking clearly." There it was, gaslighting dressed as concern, the slow erasure of my voice. That night, the house creaked the way it always had. I wandered with a lamp, pausing at the doorway where we marked the boys' heights. I touched the grooves and whispered, "I remember." 2 days later, a truck rolled up. A man in a neon vest knocked. "Locksmith," he said. "Work order to rekey the doors. Authorized by Daniel Whitaker." My knees nearly buckled. "This is my house." "Ma'am, I go by orders." "Then look me in the eye," I said, "and tell me you're rekeying a mother out of her home." He faltered. I shut the door, slid the chain, and called the sheriff. When I looked down, brass filings glittered on the porch like shrapnel. That evening, Ruth from down the lane called. "You all right?" Define all right. "I saw the truck. Want me to come sit with you?" "Not tonight, dear." "Thank you." She paused. "Margaret, people forget who planted their roots, but the soil remembers." Her words steadied me, but the smell of brass lingered. A week later, Daniel strode in without knocking, cheap cologne hanging like a curtain. He dropped papers on the counter. "Sign this, it'll make things smoother." "For everyone," I said flatly. "Define smoother." "You keep a room over the garage. We manage the assets. You'll get a monthly stipend." "A room over the garage," I repeated. "In the house, I scrubbed clean. In the bed where your father watched his last sunset?" He rolled his eyes. "Everything with you is drama." "Everything with you is arithmetic." He smirked. "We're past nostalgia." "Not past truth," I said. When he left, the house felt smaller. I opened the pantry and saw the empty space where Charles's photo had hung. Someone had taken it. I searched until midnight. Nothing. Only absence. The next morning, I drove into town in my Sunday dress, Charles's sparrow brooch at my collar. At the bank, Ms. Patel greeted me. "I need property tax receipts, as far back as you can." She printed 15 years' worth. My name appeared again and again, ink planted like seeds. "Anything else?" she asked. "Charles once mentioned a safe deposit box. Could you check?" She nodded. "Yes. Both your names, unopened for years. We hold one key. The other would be with you." In my mind, I saw Charles at the kitchen table, sliding an envelope into the ledger. Someday, Mags. Not yet. I hurried home, opened the ledger, and found it. A thin yellow envelope with my name in his hand. Inside, a brass key winked in the light. I pressed it to my chest. Not yet, I thought. Not today. Some truths need the right moment. Then came the certified letter. The hearing date moved up. My stomach lurched. I called Ruth. "They've moved it up." "Good," she said. "You're ready." "Am I?" "Margaret, you've stood in worse storms." That evening, Ethan appeared, shame radiating like static. "Daniel's lawyer says we can settle. If you sign now, you avoid court." "And avoid being small in your own story?" His shoulders slumped. "I don't want this ugly." "It already is," I said. "You just didn't mind the view." Tears welled in his eyes. "I'm sorry." "You're sorry you're uncomfortable," I told him. "Not sorry for what you did." He left, his footsteps soft on the porch. I sat on the bed and opened the envelope at last. Charles's handwriting. "If you're reading this, Mags, it means the day came after all. Go to the bank, bring your ID, and remember what we promised. The truth is patient. It can wait for its day in the light." The word steadied me like a hand on my shoulder. The next morning, I called the number Ms. Patel had given me. A calm baritone answered. "This is Collins." "Mr. Collins, my name is Margaret Whitaker. I'm being stolen from in slow motion. I need someone who remembers the law is supposed to mean something." "Bring everything you have," he said. I gathered the receipts, the ledger, the note, and the photo of Charles that I had finally found behind the flower bin, hidden as if someone wanted to erase more than my name. On my way out, I touched the notches on the wall where my boy's heights were marked. "You grew," I whispered. So did I. I locked the door and stepped into morning light. For the first time in months, it felt like it belonged to me. I had the key. I had the note. I had a lawyer's appointment. But when the sons who laughed at me in court saw the proof, would they still smile? Would they still call me small? If you were standing where I stood, with the papers in your hand and your children plotting your erasure, what would you do first? Tell me below. Sometimes our choices teach more than our victories. They laughed at me in court, my sons, and the room believed them. But the title you clicked on hints at what they didn't know. Before the judge confirmed the estate was mine, something shifted, quietly, irreversibly. This is the moment the ground moved. Mr. Collins's office wasn't marble and chrome. It was scuffed oak and heavy books, the kind of place where words outlive fashion. He rose steady-eyed and shook my hand. "Mrs. Whitaker," he said, "tell me everything." I did. The early years, the ledger, the missing photograph, the locksmith's clipboard, the summons, their laughter. He didn't interrupt. He let my words stack like fence posts. When I finished, he steepled his fingers. "What you have isn't a sad story," he said. "It's a paper trail. Courts listen to paper." I slid an envelope across the desk. The small brass key chimed against the wood. Clean, final. "Safe deposit?" he asked. "Yes," I whispered. "Charles left it for me." "That," Collins said, "may be the spine of your case." Mini cliffhanger. If the key opens proof, the laughter ends. If it opens nothing, I do. 2 days later, Miss Patel led us down a quiet corridor that smelled faintly of metal and polish. In the vault, light hesitated, dust hung like breath. She slid out a narrow box, the kind grief can fit inside. I turned the brass key. The lock surrendered with a clean click. The lid lifted. Inside, a thick envelope and an orderly stack of official papers. Edges yellowed, seals unbroken. Collins read first, lawyer eyes patient and precise. "Your husband," he said, "was meticulous." There it was. A will, signed and witnessed, naming me sole owner upon Charles's passing. Deeds in my name. Bank statements. Letters from the county tax office addressed to me alone. Every page carried weight, the kind that cannot be argued down. I traced Charles's signature with my fingertip. He had known a day like this might come. He had sent proof ahead like a lantern. Collins returned the stack to the box. "Your son's case won't just weaken," he said evenly. "It will collapse, but no premature moves. Let them think you're cornered. Then, in court, we turn on the light." I closed the box, palms steady now. The key was warm against my skin, as if it had been holding its breath for years. That night, I faced the mirror and expected the woman I had been seeing. Tired, thinned by worry. Instead, under the bathroom light, I found the glint of someone I remembered from long ago. A woman who had planted in drought and waited for rain without begging it to come. "You are not finished," I told her. "You are not small." The sentence surprised me with its iron. Maybe it was the documents. Maybe it was the key. Maybe it was simply time for my spine to remember itself. Ethan came at dusk. He stood on the porch, with his shoulders hunched, boyish hesitation wrapped around a grown man's guilt. "Mom," he said, "can we talk?" I opened the door, though a part of me wanted the chain to hold. At the table, he traced the wood grain, eyes down. "Daniel says you're making this harder than it needs to be." "Is that your thought?" I asked. "Oh, or his?" He flinched. "I don't want us to be enemies." "You stood beside your brother in court," I said. "That's a choice." "I didn't mean—" "No." I held up a hand. "You meant to keep his approval even if it cost mine. You can't have both." He swallowed. "I'm sorry." "I hope," I said quietly, "one day you'll understand the weight of that word." He left with his apology still warm and useless in the air. Through the window, the yard darkened. I pressed my palm to the cedar chest as if it were a heartbeat, mini cliffhanger. If Ethan turned back then, the story might have bent. He didn't. The days before the second hearing moved like a training montage. No one would film. Colin spread documents across his desk, arranging them with a chess player's patience. We rehearsed the timeline until it felt like a hymn. I slept in shifts, woke at odd hours to the house's old groans, walked the dawn field whispering Charles's name into the wind. "They'll argue sentiment," Collins said. "We argue law. Law is colder. It also holds." I prayed, not to win, but to stand, to face my sons without breaking eye contact. A gray sky sanded the courthouse edges as we climbed the steps. My ledger was under my arm, the brass key a small weight in my purse, as steady as a pulse. Inside, Daniel and Ethan sat at the plaintiff's table in pressed suits, looking like the kind of men strangers would trust on sight. Daniel leaned back, confident. Ethan fidgeted, glances skittering like minnows. The judge entered. The room rose. We sat. Daniel's attorney spoke first, smooth voice, polished vowels, the kind of certainty money buys. He painted me as an aging widow clinging to memory, implying that love makes people irrational, as if his clients were the rational future. "She has no claim," he said. "The estate belongs to the sons who will carry it forward." His words stung because they weren't just wrong. They were cruelly tidy. Then Collins stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't perform. He laid documents on the bench with a quiet choreography. "Your Honor, the truth is not sentiment," he said. "It is documented." The judge peered over his glasses. "Proceed." Collins gestured, and I rose. The air felt heavy, as if the room had been lined with wet wool. I held the ledger and met the judge's eyes. "Mrs. Whitaker," Collins said, "tell the court how this estate came to be yours." I didn't tell them every winter or every ache. I told them what a court needs to hear and what a heart can bear to say. The taxes paid, the bank checks signed in my hand, the cedar chest, the ledger, the will, the deeds. The county letters addressed only to me. Then I held up the key. It caught the light like a small sun. "This," I said, "is the key my husband left me, not just to a box, but to the truth he entrusted me to hold. I have held it." A soft ripple moved through the gallery. Daniel's mouth tightened. Ethan closed his eyes. Collins placed the notarized will and deeds before the judge, each with dates, signatures, stamps that look ugly until they save you. "Proof," Collins said simply. The judge read. His face didn't change. He nodded once. Mini cliffhanger. He nodded. But at what? Agreement. Procedure. Mercy? Paper doesn't whisper its secrets until a judge lets it speak. "The court will recess before rendering a decision," the judge said, voice level. The gavel cracked. The room exhaled. In the sudden noise of moving chairs, Daniel bent toward Ethan and hissed, "This isn't over." But the way his eyes darted said he'd felt the floor tilt. Ethan's hands trembled on the table, thumbs rubbing each other raw. Collins touched my elbow lightly. "Breathe," he said. "Let the paper do what paper does." In the hallway, the vending machine hummed like cheap chorus. I held a cup of tea that had no temperature. Across from me, a corkboard was crowded with flyers for services no one wants until they need them. Mediation, grief groups, clinics about wills. I ran a finger over the rim of the cup and thought of the envelope in the vault, the way the lid breathed out dust when it opened, the way Charles's signature looked like a man at peace. In the mirror of a courthouse restroom, a harsh fluorescent light cut every line on my face. For the first time in months, I didn't resent my age. It looked like evidence. Years lived, promises kept, a life that would not be redrafted because someone younger wanted the pen. I pressed my palm to the cool counter and whispered, "Hold." We filed back in when the bailiff called. The room felt smaller, as if walls had inched forward while we were gone. The judge shuffled papers into a precise stack. No one coughed. My sons didn't laugh now. They looked like men who had woken to find the foundations not where they left them. "Be ready," Collins murmured, not looking at me, not needing to. I slid the key back into my purse and folded my hands. Whatever came next would not be nostalgia or arithmetic. It would be the weight of words Charles had left, ink and trust, landing where they belonged. Mini cliffhanger. End beat. The judge lifted his gavel. The room held its breath. And at that edge between sound and silence, I knew, whether I won or lost, I had stopped being small. If you were standing there, proof in your hands, betrayal at your back, would you let the truth speak, or would you speak for it? Tell me below. Someone here needs the courage you found. The courthouse cafeteria smelled of burnt coffee and stale bread. I barely tasted the tea I held, my hands wrapped tight around the paper cup as though warmth alone could steady me. Colin sat across the table, flipping through documents with the composure of a man reading Sunday news. "They're rattled," he said calmly. "Daniel is used to controlling the room. He won't know how to respond when the law doesn't bend." I stared at my reflection in the tea's surface. "And Ethan?" Collins's gaze softened. "He's already fractured. But this isn't about guilt or apologies. This is about ownership. Yours." I nodded, though the weight of sorrow pressed against my ribs. I hadn't wanted this war. I had wanted family. But as the bailiff called us back, I knew the battle had chosen me. The room was colder now, or maybe I simply noticed it more. Daniel's lawyer shuffled nervously, his earlier bravado dulled. Daniel himself sat rigid, jaw clenched. Ethan fidgeted, eyes darting like a boy caught stealing from the pantry. The judge adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Collins, proceed." Collins stood, his presence commanding without raising his voice. "Your Honor, we have presented proof of ownership, notarized deeds, tax receipts, and a valid will. My client is not clinging to memory. She is standing on law. To suggest otherwise is an insult not only to her, but to this court." He gestured for me to rise again. My knees shook, but I met the judge's gaze. "This estate," I said, "was built by sacrifice. My husband's hands, my back, my years. And when he passed, he trusted me to continue. I did, alone. I paid every bill. I maintained every acre. I have never faltered. I ask not for pity, only recognition of what is already true." For a heartbeat, silence draped the room. Then Daniel burst to his feet. "This is manipulation," he barked. "She's rewriting history. She doesn't deserve it." "Sit down, Mr. Whitaker," the judge warned. But Daniel pressed on, his voice sharp, desperate. "She's old. She doesn't even know how to run it anymore. We're the future. Without us, this place is nothing." His words cracked through me like lightning. Yet instead of breaking, I felt steel rise in my spine. Collins spoke again, calm as ever. "Your Honor, allow me to submit one final piece of evidence." From his briefcase, he withdrew the sealed envelope from the deposit box. He slid it onto the bench. "This letter, written by the late Charles Whitaker, reaffirms his intent. It is addressed directly to my client, and it is signed." The judge unfolded the letter, eyes scanning slowly. Then he read aloud, "Margaret, if the day comes when anyone questions your right to this land, remember this. You are its heart. I entrust it wholly to you. Do not let anyone, family or stranger, convince you otherwise." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Daniel's face drained of color. Ethan lowered his head into his hands. The judge laid the letter aside. "The intent is unambiguous." The judge leaned forward, his voice resonant. "This court finds that the estate belongs solely to Mrs. Margaret Whitaker. The claims of Daniel and Ethan Whitaker are without merit. Case closed." He struck the gavel, its crack final, absolute. For a moment, time froze. Daniel's smirk dissolved into disbelief, his mouth opening but no words coming. Ethan whispered something under his breath, too soft to hear. I inhaled deeply. For the first time in months, the air did not feel stolen. Daniel shoved papers off the table, his anger spilling like shards. "This isn't fair," he shouted. "We deserved it." I turned to him, my voice steady. "You wanted everything, but you forgot who built it." His eyes burned with rage, but beneath it flickered something smaller. Fear, maybe shame. He stormed out, his footsteps echoing like thunder fading down a hall. Ethan remained seated, shoulders hunched, unable to meet my gaze. For a fleeting moment, I longed to reach across, to comfort the boy I once rocked to sleep. But comfort without respect is a lie. So I simply said, "You chose your side." He whispered, broken, "I'm sorry, Mom." I nodded once. "Then live like it." When I stepped through the courthouse doors, the sky had cleared. Sunlight spilled across the steps, golden and fierce. Collins walked beside me, silent but firm, his presence a quiet guard. Reporters clustered near the sidewalk, their voices sharp with questions. I ignored them. My steps were slow, deliberate, each one grounding me deeper into the truth. I had not been erased. At the bottom of the steps, Ruth waited. She held out a hand, her eyes shining. "Well," she said softly, "the soil remembers." I squeezed her hand, a tear sliding free. "Yes," I whispered, "it does." That night, I walked the halls of the house. The rooms hummed with memory. Charles's laughter, the boys' childhood squabbles, the long nights of solitude. Yet something had shifted. The walls no longer echoed with fear. In the living room, I rehung Charles's photograph. His eyes sparkled in the golden field, his smile eternal. "I did it, Charles," I whispered. "Not for the land alone, for us, for me." I stepped outside onto the porch. The air was cool, fragrant with earth. In the distance, the fields stretched wide, bathed in moonlight. Mine, still mine, always mine. And I ask you, if it had been you, standing before your children's betrayal, armed with nothing but truth, would you have fought? Or would you have yielded just to keep the peace? Because peace without respect is not peace at all. The morning after the verdict, I woke to silence. Not the silence of dread that had haunted me for months, but a gentler hush, the kind that follows a storm. The sun crept through the curtains, painting the bedroom in soft gold. For the first time in a long time, I breathed without the weight of fear pressing on my chest. I slipped on my boots and stepped outside. Dew clung to the grass, sparkling like tiny jewels across the fields Charles and I once plowed by hand. The air carried the faint scent of lilacs from Ruth's yard down the road. My land, my air, my sky. I wandered to the barn, its wood weathered but strong. My palm grazed the rough boards as memories stirred. The boys chasing each other through the hay, Charles hammering shingles, my younger self singing lullabies under her breath as she worked. I whispered, "We kept it, Charles." Past the barn, the field stretched wide, ready for planting. I imagined Charles's calloused hands pressing seeds into the soil, his voice steady with faith. "Someday, Mags, this land will feed us all." I smiled through tears. It had, and it would, again, not because Daniel or Ethan claimed it, but because we had built it and I had defended it. Inside, the house felt different. Not emptier, though the boys' laughter was long gone, but fuller somehow. Full of something stronger than memory, full of dignity. I walked to the wall where their childhood heights were still marked. My fingers traced each line, each date. "You grew," I whispered. "So did I." In the kitchen, I placed Charles's photo back on the wall where it belonged. His smile met mine, a reminder that even in absence, trust can remain. Then I pulled a chair to the window, brewed coffee, and let myself sit, really sit, for the first time in years. I didn't feel like a widow clinging to the past. I felt like a woman who had survived a war and come home victorious. A week later, Ethan came back. He stood at the porch steps, hat in hand, shame etched into every line of his face. "Mom," he said softly, "can I come in?" I studied him. The boy I had once rocked to sleep. the young man who had chosen his brother's ambition over my trust. His eyes were tired, different. I opened the door. "Sit." We sat at the same table where countless meals had been shared, where arguments had flared, where silence had cut sharper than words. He cleared his throat. "I don't expect forgiveness overnight. I need you to know I see it now. Daniel wanted control. I just wanted peace, but I chose wrong." I sipped my coffee. "You chose easy, and easy is not always right." He nodded, shame deepening. "You're right." We sat in silence. Then I said, "Ethan, I raised you to stand on your own feet. If you want to rebuild trust, you'll have to do it the same way, step by step, no shortcuts." Tears filled his eyes. "I'll try." I touched his hand briefly. "Then start." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a door left ajar. From Daniel, I heard nothing. No calls, no letters. Rumors drifted in through neighbors. Anger, debts, restless schemes. But his silence was its own verdict. He had lost more than land. He had lost the right to call this place home. It hurt. Oh, it hurt. No mother dreams of victory over her child, but I also knew love without respect is a chain, and I had broken mine. One evening, I carried a single white lily to the hill where Charles rested. The sunset poured fire across the sky, the kind he used to pause and admire even when chores pressed. I laid the flower on his grave. "I kept it safe," I whispered, "not for greed, not even for memory, for love, for dignity." The wind rustled the grass as though he answered, "I trusted you. I always knew you could." I stood there until the first stars appeared, the cool night wrapping me like a shawl. A few days later, I opened the house to Ruth and a few neighbors. We shared stew, bread, and laughter that filled the rooms like it once had. They congratulated me, yes, but more than that, they reminded me I wasn't alone. "This house," I told them, raising my glass, "is not for greed. It's for love. Whoever forgets that loses it." They nodded, some wiping tears. And for the first time, I believe my words weren't just for them. They were for me, too. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Respect isn't given by blood. It's earned through love and kindness. Betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from family, but justice heals strongest when it is seen." I did not win land. I won back myself. And I closed the book knowing my story, my truth, might echo beyond these walls. If you've listened this far, maybe you've known betrayal too. Maybe you've been silenced, overlooked, or told you don't matter. Hear me now. You are not invisible. Your sacrifices count. Your voice is worthy. If you were me standing in that courtroom, would you have fought? Or would you have stepped aside for the sake of peace? Share your thoughts. Your story matters here. Here, every tale is a reminder. No one suffers alone. Together, we speak for fairness, for dignity, for respect. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to Twist Stories and ring the bell. Here you'll find more stories of sacrifice, betrayal, and the tables turning in ways no one expects. Tell me in the comments, have you ever seen greed tear through a family? What did it teach you? Because in the end, betrayal may break us for a moment, but truth has a way of standing tall, and when it does, it heals not only the land we walk, but the hearts we carry. I closed the journal, turned off the lamp, and let the house fall into quiet. Outside, the fields stretched wide under, the moonlight, steady and eternal, mine, always mine. And I slept, not as a widow abandoned, not as a mother erased, but as a woman who had stood tall in the storm and still remained.